Hey guys, it's Calum, my review for the first season of the latest new show on Hulu, that of course being The Act. So what The Act is essentially about is we center on the harrowing true story of Gypsy Rose Blanchard and her mom, Dee Dee Blanchard, and these two basically, we see their whole relationship, which the entire thing was basically built on a lie. I mean, Dee Dee made Gypsy believe that she had all these various illnesses, but in reality there really was nothing medically wrong with her, but she kept her confined in a wheelchair. She didn't really let her have any semblance of a life whatsoever, and so the rest of the show is seeing how Gypsy dealt with it, but also her simultaneously starting to gain answers, starting to realize that there are just a lot of gaps that just aren't really making sense, and eventually trying to find a way to escape it, and the desperate measures that she will take to do so, and that's really all I'm going to say. So The Act overall, I was very intrigued about this show. I mean, pretty much since I've heard about this story, everything that was going on, I've been very fascinated by it. I mean, just the whole idea of this mother making everyone think that her child was ill and somehow she was able to keep that from them. That whole thing has just completely fascinated me. And I was very interested in seeing how they would tell this story, how true to life it would be and things like that. And I really did not know how it was going to turn out. There was always that skepticism that maybe it just wasn't going to translate as well, but I have to say, The Act really impressed me. I really loved what we did get here. Very quickly, this became one of my new obsessions in terms of TV. I think this is such a fantastic first season. There's so much that I just absolutely adore about it, and we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And I'll just say this right now, the entire cast here, everyone is exceptional. I think every single performer in this series just acted the hell out of this show, and I just cannot praise them enough. But we first have to talk about Patricia Arquette, an actress that is very likable, and by design, we are going to like her. The problem is, she's playing a character that was so vile and just a complete monster. I mean, Dee Dee Blanchard was a monster in, every sense of the word. And the way Arquette just completely transforms into this role is fantastic. I really don't know how she did it, but every mannerism, I mean, obviously we don't know how Dee Dee really was around Gypsy because, there's no way to uncover that, but from what we've heard, I mean, she really does capture the feigned nurturing of Dee Dee, how she kind of acted very nurturing and very caring towards Gypsy, but in reality, there always was this deceptive, sort of evil nature, and you really do get to see that unfold throughout the show, and Arquette just had everything down pat. I was so impressed by her throughout the series. I thought she did such an incredible job, especially in the scenes where you can tell that she is mad at Gypsy and she really is trying to hold back her anger. I thought she just did such an incredible job here, and I love what she had to do when she really gets to sink her teeth into this role. Once she does, get into the really meaty scenes where she's just going off on Gypsy, she's just absolutely terrifying, and she makes you hate her. She does such a great job. And again, Arquette is such a likable actress, and the fact that I was able to hate her as much as I did is really credit to how great she was in this role. And I know she just recently won an Emmy for Escape at Dan & More, but if it was up to me, she would absolutely already have another one. I mean, I don't think there is any question whatsoever. She should be getting another Emmy nomination, and I hope she does win because she was absolutely phenomenal here. However, for me, the stand-up performance of this entire series, and probably the most surprising, was Joey King as Gypsy Rose Blanchard, who, let me just say right now, yes, I have not been very kind towards King as an actress. In fact, for a while, I've kind of had the opinion that she's been an actress in decline, that she was good in a couple things, but she really has not been picking very good projects. And honestly, seeing what she did here, she absolutely blew me away. I mean, she shows a range and a willingness to her that I just did not know that she was capable of. And similar to Arquette, she really did a great job at studying who Gypsy really was, the voice and the mannerisms and everything. She just had it down perfectly. The innocent nature, the very wide-eyed sort of nature that Gypsy had, she had that down very well. But then also the desperation that this character, that Gypsy really did show in her later life, I think she examined very well here as well. Just in general, I loved what King brought to the role. I thought she did such an incredible job, and I'm hoping after this show that she tries to pick more serious roles like this, because I do think she's a very talented actress. I do think that she's going to go very far if she picks more serious projects, you know. Stay away from things like The Kissing Booth and things like that. No, this is much more in her wheelhouse. This is much closer to what she needs to be doing. And, you know, if you are not a huge fan of Joey King, I implore you to check her out in this, because she is absolutely phenomenal. And I just could not believe how good she was here. And honestly, the show is worth watching alone just for Arquette and King's performances. These two, they have a very good understanding of who these people were. They do such a great job. The very complicated relation that they have, they handle that so well together. The two of them, you know, they have a chemistry, but obviously it's a very toxic chemistry, and they do a very good job with that overall. I cannot praise these two women enough. They were so well casted here, and definitely one of the best things about the show. But that's not to say the rest of the cast here isn't great either, because I really do think everyone did a very good job. Calum Worthy especially, I don't think is getting talked about enough. You know, he comes in a little bit later into the series, but he plays Nick Godejohn, who is Gypsy's, you know, boyfriend in this series, and the two of them also have a very toxic type of relation that I don't really want to get into, but the type of character that Worthy is playing, is one that can be very tough, because this is someone that had autism and was on that spectrum and things like that. So you want to try to, you know, handle that character as well as possible. And I think he did a very good job overall. I was very impressed by him in this show. AnnaSophia, Robb, and Chloë Sevigny are also very good here, sort of playing the audience in a sense where they're blind to what Dee Dee was selling. They pretty much are on board. They don't really waver until later on when they start to question it more. But for a long time, they really do believe what she's doing. And I thought they did some really great work throughout the series. Margot Martindale even shows up for one episode, and she's great. Everyone really did kill it here. I was so impressed by the casting in this show. And not only did they get actors that look like the people they were portraying, but again, they had actors that I think really understood who these people were, really understood the mindset that they had, and I think they did a very good job with that overall. But now let's get into the directing and the writing here, which of course, before I do get into it, I know there's a lot of things going on legal-wise with Michelle Dean right now, who is one of the creators of this show. I'm not really going to get into it all that much, because that's not what I'm here to do. This is a review. This is not a, you know, editorial on how shady Dean is being, but I will say a lot of what she's done, it makes her come across very disingenuous. It sucks what's going on, especially the way that the Blanchard family is involved, the way she's been so cold to them. Yeah, all of that really does suck. But regardless of the legality issues and things like that, it really doesn't take away from the craft here. I mean, what Nick Antosca and Michelle Dean did with this show is nothing short of extraordinary. You can tell that these are two people that really do care about the story. They really are trying to examine as much as they possibly can, and I think they do a very good job with that. The tone of this show, it's just so devastating to watch, and it's one of those shows where I always was, you know, looking forward to watching it, but at the same time, it always was a very hard watch. And so I can understand if some people might have a hard time watching this show because of that. Me, I was so invested in what was going on that I really couldn't look away. And I think that really is due to how well this show was done tonally. I mean, yes, this is very much a you know, it is very much a gothic sort of drama, and as much as, you know, you want to believe that this is fiction, this did actually happen, and I think that's something that they did very well here. They took this story very seriously, and I definitely think they handled it very well, but the writing is what I really want to get into here, because I think that's something that this show does extremely well, is how this show is really written, and I will say right now, I mean, that's one of my favorite things about the show easily. I think that the writing here is just spectacular, especially when it comes to the relation between Gypsy and Dee Dee. I mean, this is such a complicated relation, because yes, on one hand, what Dee Dee is doing is extremely fucked up. I mean, she is literally pigeonholing her daughter to stay young forever. Like, she doesn't want her to grow up. Anytime that she shows a little bit of you know, her maturity or even just a little bit of her figure. I mean, she freaks out, and just the way that she reacted to those things, it's crazy to think that this was actually a true story. But then, of course, you have Gypsy, who is very conflicted, because on one hand, yes, she does love her mother, and you can see that love she does have for her, but there's a lot of things that she is starting to question. There's a lot of information that just isn't really holding up as much. There's things that she's been told, and now she's getting information that kind of conflates with what Dee Dee has told her, and I thought that whole relationship was so well done, because on one hand, you see why Gypsy does love Dee Dee. I mean, again, any time that Dee Dee is faking, what Gypsy is going through, and she is making Gypsy think that she has all of these diseases, she does it in a very nurturing manner. So at first glance, if you were saying, just walking by and seeing Dee Dee and Gypsy, you wouldn't really think much of it, because Dee Dee does a really great job with selling it, putting on this, quote-unquote act for everyone. But, obviously, we knew what was really going on. We knew what was really going on behind closed doors, and you really do get to see that here, and it's absolutely devastating to watch. I mean, just what Dee Dee did, again, I have not hated someone in a show this much in a very long time. Just the things she did to her daughter, the things that she precluded her from doing, the fact that something as little as Gypsy getting to eat a cake, for example, she made her think that she was, like, extremely allergic to sugar, even though her eating, nothing happened to her. Like, she didn't swell up or anything like that. So, just the things that she did to her, not letting her have any friends. I mean, it's just, it's just so terrible. It's just so devastating to watch, and it really is very messed up for sure. And again, I can understand if people don't want to watch it, but I just find it so fascinating the way she was able to do that, and especially when you contrast the relationship that AnnaSophia, Robb, and Chloë Sevigny have, which I thought was really well interweaved here. I know they took some liberties there, because AnnaSophia Robb's character is based off of a real person, Aaliyah Woodsmansey, but her character in the show is named, of course, Lacey, and her mom, Mel, I believe, is completely fictional. But the way they tell the story, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, Mel is someone who really is kind of sympathizing with Dee Dee. She sees the care that Dee Dee has for Gypsy, and it makes her feel that she should be a better mother. And the way they handle that relationship, it could have been very damaging to the show. It could have been something where, sure, you want to show why these people care for Dee Dee, but you don't want it to make it seem like they're trying to make you sympathize with Dee Dee. And they really didn't do that at all. You understand, okay, this is why Mel believes Dee Dee. This is why Mel is 100% trusting of Dee Dee, and I think they did a very good job with that. And Lacey and Gypsy's relationship also is very well done, because Lacey is someone who, she is your typical teenager. She's going out with boys, she's doing, very rebellious things, and this is stuff that Gypsy wants to partake in. And obviously, Lacey, while she wants Gypsy to be involved, while she would like to have Gypsy as a friend, she also, to her, this is a 15-year-old girl, so she has to be very careful what she does, and I think they did a very good job with fleshing out that relationship as well, and that's something else I very much enjoy about the show. Like I said, I think they really took their time with fleshing these relationships out, and that was something that I was very impressed with here. And because they do such a great job of fleshing out these core relationships, when things really start to get darker, and when Gypsy finally decides to make that choice, which I'm not going to reveal. If you guys haven't seen, the show, and you don't know too much about the story, I'm actually not going to tell you what Gypsy decides to do, but let's just say she makes a certain choice, and the show really does take a turn in that way. Obviously, we know very well what happened. For those who are familiar with the story, we know pretty much how this does play out. We know how all of that does, of course, go down. We know what ends up happening, basically. But the way that they handled it, I thought was very well done. I mean, the show is really kicked into high gear. The entire sort of tone of the show changes, and it made a lot of sense for what was happening. I mean, Gypsy as a person, you really do feel bad for, obviously, because of all the stuff that's happening to her. The fact that, I mean, she couldn't even go outside, like I said, or make friends or anything like that. And even when she realized that she didn't need the wheelchair, her mother still made her, sit in it, because she had to keep up this act. She couldn't, she couldn't risk the idea of Gypsy ruining this for her, because she knew what she was doing was wrong, but she still went with it, and that's what's so fucked up about this whole thing. So when Gypsy starts to make much more irrational choices, and she starts to do things that could be seen as unjust, you can understand why Gypsy would do this. Obviously, the show isn't necessarily condoning what she's doing, but you can understand why Gypsy would decide to make these choices, and I think they did a very good job with that overall. And also, for those who are worried, because like I said, there is a lot going on with the show legal-wise, I actually did watch the documentary that is sort of a companion piece of the show, even though it came out a year before. You can kind of view it as a companion piece. It's basically a whole documentary about the real Gypsy and Dee Dee and their relationship, and from what I gathered, there really wasn't a lot here they changed. If anything, there were more things that I was surprised were real than things that weren't. I mean, there were so many things in the show I'm like, no, there's no way that actually happened, but it did. Certain dialogue exchanges, I mean, they really examined this as much as they possibly could. They really do explore every possible facet of what was going on. They explore the darkness behind it all, and it's really well done. There are a couple liberties that they did take, but it is fairly accurate for the most part, and that's something I thought they handled very well here overall. I was very impressed with the writing here. There's a lot more I'd love to get into, but again, for those who aren't familiar with this story, I don't really want to spoil too much of what does go down, especially stuff with Calum Worthy's character. I can't really get too much into that, but it is such a fucked up story, and because that, I can understand why it might be hard for someone to invest in it. But for me, I absolutely loved what I saw, and I thought it was so riveting that I just couldn't look away. But they also do a really good job at showing who Gypsy really was. I mean, sure, she put on this attitude of she's this innocent little girl and things like that who watches Disney movies and, doesn't seem to have a very good understanding of a lot of things in the world. And a lot of people pass that as, oh, she's a little slow, but it really is because her mother is keeping her from experiencing these things. And you really do get to see that, especially when Gypsy starts to mature and things like that. When her body starts to change and things like that, it's very noticeable. But Dee Dee tries to cover it up as much as she can because, again, she cannot do anything that deviates from what Dee Dee has already created. And you really do get to see that here. Now, I want to reiterate that although the show does do a good job of developing who Dee Dee was, I mean, there is a whole episode dedicated to who Dee Dee was before all of this went down, when Gypsy was at a very young age, how all this started, and they do a very good job with it. It is not at all trying to humanize Dee Dee. If anything, it makes you look at her in an even more, it makes you even more angered, and it makes you look at her in an even more aggravating way than you already did. I mean, just the things that she did, the things that she was capable of, is absolutely heinous, and it really makes me sick to my stomach. It really does. I mean, I can't believe that Dee Dee did half of the shit that she did, and some of that is revealed in this episode that I'm referring to. Yeah, it's absolutely disgusting what she did, and I just can't believe that some of it went down. But again, they don't at all try to make you condone what she's doing. They don't try to make you sympathize with her. It's more, they're trying to get you to understand why Dee Dee would make the choices that she did. And in a sense, you can. But again, I mean, it doesn't change the fact that this woman was a monster. This woman was not well. I mean, she was definitely not very stable at all. Even in the documentary, I mean, there are people who are constantly saying, like, yeah, I didn't really, when Dee Dee was doing things, they weren't surprised about it because she always had this very just ferocious nature to her, and it's just really sad to see all the people that she really did damage, and you really do get to see that here in its fullest, explored as fully as possible, and it's just very hard to watch. But I thought they did a very good job with that overall. Again, it got us to understand what Dee Dee was doing, and that's something that I was very impressed with. It's something that I didn't know I needed, but I thought they handled very well. So yeah, the writing is absolutely phenomenal here. I really can't praise it enough. I think it's just absolutely fantastic the way they were able to craft such a story. Now, in terms of the cinematography of the show, it is extremely well crafted. I mean, it is very raw. They really do a good job of going as in-depth with this as possible. There's a lot of things they show that you don't want them to show, but they show it anyway. There's always this very frightening sort of quality to it, and that's something that I thought was definitely very well handled. I really did appreciate a lot of the cinematography here. There are even some things that were pretty shot for shot. One scene in particular in the penultimate episode, um, I saw it and I was like, that's so well done. I love the way they're handling this. And then when you see it on the documentary, I mean, they recreated everything. They went all out to make it as accurate as possible, and I was so impressed with the cinematography in that scene in particular. There are some great scenes in the show for sure. There's a lot of great close-ups, especially when you see the things that are happening to Gypsy and how much she is aging and things like that. I thought they did a very good job with that. But again, just really seeing, what ends up going down, particularly in that one scene, I thought was so well handled, and I really love the way that was crafted. So cinematography is fantastic. The score is also so great here. Jeff Russo's score, it's haunting, it's beautiful at points, it has this very unsettling nature to it, similar to how the show does, and I thought he captured that very well here, and that was one of the most consistent things throughout this entire show. His score is just so great, and I don't know if it's going to come on to, like, say, Apple Music or Spotify, but the second it does, I'm downloading it because I absolutely loved the score that he crafted here. It was so well composed. And as far as the pacing for this show, I can see people getting a little impatient because if you know what happened, here's what I'll say. If you know what Gypsy and Nick Godejohn, what they end up doing, later on in the show, you might feel a little impatient. You might feel like, all right, when are we going to get to this? When is this going to happen? But if you don't know what's going to go on, I actually think the pacing is going to elevate the show for you because they really do take their time in fleshing out the conflict and the complicated relation between Gypsy and Dee Dee and what she's really going through, and then eventually setting forth the plan in motion that Gypsy eventually executes. What we know that Gypsy did, that does eventually happen. It takes a while to get there. For me though, I think this made a lot of sense because they want you to invest in their relationship. They want you to understand how Gypsy feels for Dee Dee. They want you to understand what Dee Dee was doing to Gypsy. So when she does what she does, it kind of feels like poetic justice to Dee Dee in that way. And that's something that I thought they did very well. So I can understand if people have a problem with the pacing, but for me, I thought it was definitely very well handled. So again, there's a lot I really do love about this show. There's a lot I really would love to get into. And you'd think, considering how much I'm praising the show, you'd think it's pretty much perfect. Well, not 100%. There are a couple things that do hold it back for me. And there's really nothing too big. I will say there is a point in this show where AnnaSophia, Robb, and Chloë Sevigny, they kind of disappear. And at first, I was disappointed. I was like, all right, I really did not feel like they gave as much to them as they possibly could. They did a good job in the beginning of establishing this conflict that, she's kind of acting out because of their dad, her dad leaving and things like that, and now Mel has to do this all on her own. I thought that was a very good arc, but they don't really get into it all that much, but if you look at these characters as simply victims of buying into Dee Dee's bullshit, I think their characters are actually elevating. They do some stuff in the last two episodes in particular that did actually fix some of that for me. So it wasn't as much of an issue as it was at first. It wasn't as much of an issue as it was at first, but it is still sort of a prevalent issue. But the only real issue I have with the show, the one thing that does kind of bother me, is something they decided to do in the first two episodes, which again, without getting into anything, the first 2 or 3 episodes of the show, they will cut back to the present day. So like 2015, when Gypsy has already committed this act that's going on. And to be honest, I really didn't see the point of it. I don't know what they were trying to do there. If they would have done it throughout the show, then yeah, I would have understand that. But they only do it in the first 3 episodes, and anytime they cut back, it took me out of it. I mean, it turned into just, boring procedural, and I don't know what the point of it was, because we know she's going to do it. Like, they were kind of doing it in a way where, like, it's building up to something. But again, if you know the story about Gypsy Rose Blanchard, you know what she's going to do. This is not something that is, like, surprising. Like, you're not really building up to anything by doing that, and I didn't really see the point of it. Thankfully, like I said, they dropped it after the first 3 episodes. Before a while, it was like, oh my god, this is really bothering me. And I'm glad that they did eventually decide to deviate away from that. Overall, guys, The Act is a very harrowing and very tragic show for sure. It is definitely not the easiest watch, but it is a fantastic one for sure. It tells a story that is sadly very true, and I think at the end of the day, that's the thing that is the most surprising about this whole thing. I mean, you'll watch this show and you'll think, again, there are just certain things that didn't happen, but they did. They happened the way that the show said that they happened. There are a couple things, like I said, there are definitely some liberties that they took, but a lot of things they completely were right on the money with, and that's something that very much did impress me. The performances are just absolutely incredible. Patricia Arquette and Joey King in particular, massive Emmy consideration. If they don't get Emmys, and both of them need to, not just Patricia Arquette, both of them need to get Emmys, and if they don't, I will be absolutely I'll be annoyed. Honestly, I will be angry that they did not get Emmy consideration, because I thought they both did some incredible job, just such an incredible job, especially Joey King. I don't think you'll ever look at her the same way again after watching this show, and I mean that in all the best ways possible. Just great cinematography, a fantastic score from Jeff Russo, just a really great story overall. Just in general, aside from that one problem I have with it, this is a nearly perfect season of television. Again, yes, there are a lot of things going on legally that aren't so great, but if you can overlook all of that stuff, if you can overlook the kind of stuff that Michelle Dean is doing, The Act is a very, very gratifying show. It's very riveting. It can be very hard to watch, and yes, this is a show that I think is going to piss off a lot of people. It is very devastating for sure, and I can understand if for some it just makes you way too uncomfortable. And if you are that kind of person, I totally get it for sure. But if you are willing to invest it, if you can handle it, it is absolutely worth your time. It is for sure one of my favorite shows of the year so far, and I am definitely going to give the first season of The Act overall an A. Like I said, guys, it's a hard watch for sure. I can understand if some people really don't want to watch it, but I think it is absolutely worth investing your time in. And I honestly do wish more people were talking about it. I think this is honestly one of Hulu's best shows, and I just wish it had more of a conversation. But that's really it for my review of the first season of The Act. Let me know what you guys thought of the show overall, left your thoughts in it. I don't really know if there's going to be a season 2 because of all those legal issues and things like that. But if this is the only season we got, I am perfectly fine with that. I am fine if this is not an anthology series. I know that was the intent. In fact, Dean even hinted at possibly getting Arquette and King back, which I think that's a bit of a stretch. I mean, these are really big. Arquette especially is a very, very high in demand actress, and I don't know if they'd be able to get her again. I feel like this is sort of like a once in a blue moon sort of thing. But, you know, it definitely could be cool to see what she comes up with, but let's just say this is the last season, this is the only season of the show. I'm perfectly fine with that, if that's the case. But, either way, guys, in my review, the first season of The Act, the most guys saw this season overall, leave your thoughts in it. If you know more about the Gypsy Rose Blanchard story and you want me to get more into it, I am definitely, definitely message me in the comments down below and things like that. This is a story that very much does fascinate me. There's a lot of things that, yes, they're very haunting. Yes, it is devastating to think about, but it's one that I really get invested in. I don't know what it is about this story, but it just really does compel me, and it sucks me in, and I can't wrap my head around the fact that this is actually a true thing. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.